Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the NBA Front Office Show. Hope everybody had a wonderful weekend. We've got plenty of NBA basketball to break down here. I'm Trevor Lane. You can find me on Twitter at Trevor_Lane, on Instagram at Trevor Lane NBA, joined by Keith Smith at Keith Smith NBA over on the Twitter machine. Before we get into any of the NBA basketball stuff, though, make sure you are subscribing right here to the NBA Front Office YouTube channel. We're making that push for 20,000. We're getting there. I know it's kind of a lull right now in terms of transaction news, but we are still moving up that ladder. So make sure you are subscribing right here to the YouTube channel. Keith, how are you doing? How was your weekend?
I'm good, man. It was a weekend filled with basketball and a whole lot of college hoops on, all weekend. And then we had the, NBA games, of course, that night. So I know everybody's all fired up for March Madness. We will have a bracket group, a front office bracket group. I will tweet that out at Keith Smith NBA when I have that bracket group set up. It's just for fun. But our little prize is going to be, we're going to let you write a rant. You can send that, whoever wins, maybe we'll do the top 2 or 3, rant or a hot take or whatever it is. And as long as it's acceptable for our channel here and not, cuss filled or, very hurtful or anything, we'll read it and we'll share it. So that'll be the prize there. We'll figure all that stuff out as we go. But yeah, we're super excited, man. It's March Madness time. We got hoops on, Thursday and Friday, 2 of the best days of the end of, I was going to say NBA calendar. Basketball calendar.
That's right. Yeah, I'm excited for it too. Always fun to get more basketball. That's the thing. You can never have too much basketball. So if this just means we get more basketball, okay, I will take it. And then we've had NFL free agency has been going off too, so I've been all over that. And MLB free agency too has been going crazy. Oh, it's been a fun time for sports, and let me tell you, Keith, there have been plenty of distractions for me to take me away from what's going on in Lakers land. There have been a few positive moments recently, but also a lot of downtime. So there's been plenty of distractions for me, which has been absolutely great. Speaking of which, I guess that's where we should really start. Anthony Davis, we got a little bit of an update on AD in terms of his comeback efforts. Frank Vogel, we asked him yesterday, actually before the Lakers took on the Suns, how confident he was that Anthony Davis was going to come back, and he said 100% maybe. That was his answer. That was his answer. And Keith,
that sounds about right.
You know this. You know what happens. So there's this weird phenomenon in press rooms where whenever anybody, coach, player, says anything remotely funny, everybody, all the reporters have to act like it's the funniest thing they've ever heard. So, of course, that drew a ton of laughs. Lakers fans on Twitter, meanwhile, were less thrilled than the 100% maybe answer from Vogel. Of course, he was joking around at that moment, but it sounds like AD is going to get back out on the floor this week. Going to be doing some stationary shooting, and then they'll go from there. The plan is not to shut him down for the season. The plan is to try to bring him back this year, but more imaging coming up this week, and then they'll see what's what at that point.
Yeah, my guess is they are going to continue to let's see where things stand by the time we get to the time he may be ready, right? Because there's no reason to rush him back if you are in a position of, you know what, and I'm not saying this, let me caveat with them, not expecting this at all. But if they start to fall out of the play-in race or something, then there's no reason to bring them back, right? Or if it's, man, we lost 2 more guys due to injury, then it probably becomes there's no reason to bring them back. But if you're in a position where, all right, it's kind of what we are right now, bring him back and see where it goes. As long as he's truly healthy, can't do any more damage, you might as well get him back on the floor and just start giving it your best run here, whether it be through the play-in or the actual playoffs themselves, because we'll see. And clearly Anthony Davis thought from his comments that if he was healthy, they would have beat the Suns last year, and it's a little hard to argue with, right? They were up 2-1 in that series, and and he may be right. I don't think the Suns need any more motivation or anybody else kind of doubting who they are as a team. I mean, they're the best team in the league by far and away. This year they have a 7.5 game lead right now over the Memphis Grizzlies in the Western Conference. So they're basically going to cruise all the way into the playoffs. But yeah, that was just kind of interesting. That was one of those ones where I think a lot got made out of it, and I kind of look at it as like, what else is he gonna
Right.
say? I mean, he could have done the whole, oh, you don't know, they're
Mhm.
a tough team, credit to them, all that stuff. But I mean, these guys get where they get by being supremely confident that they're the difference maker, and I don't have a huge problem with it.
Yeah, it was interesting. So I'm not sure 100% certain who asked the question. I was on the Zoom call. Typically, when it's one of the LA based reporters that's in person, I tend to recognize their voice. I didn't recognize the voice of the person who asked the question. So I don't know if it was a Suns reporter or if it was a Lakers reporter. I'm not
Mhm.
100% on that. But the question also got asked to Frank Vogel. So clearly, somebody's writing something along these lines.
Yeah.
It was a major headline in Arizona sports from what I saw as soon as he said it, right? Instantly the headlines started coming out.
Oh, of course.
Anthony Davis says this and trying to get Suns fans in an uproar. Frank Vogel got asked the same question, and Vogel does. He is one of the best I've ever seen when it comes to handling press conferences. I've yet to see a question phase him, and you can argue with the X's and O's and rotation, all that kind of stuff. Just purely talking press conference in terms of managing questions that gets thrown at him, he just never gets phased by anything. So that question was thrown at him. He very, very easily sidestepped it, gave the standard, well, we can never truly know, and they're a good team, and all that kind of stuff. Anthony Davis did not. Probably not what you want to say right before you're playing that team. And also probably not what you want to say when you're probably, if you do happen to manage to get through the play-in, which is not a given, but if they do happen to get through the play-in, that's the team they're going to see in round one. But again, Anthony Davis tends to be very honest in his interviews, sometimes to a fault, and so it's not
Mhm.
a surprise that he said what he said or that he thinks that way. I personally I agreed with him at the time. Again, I'm biased, but I agreed that I thought had Anthony Davis stayed healthy, the Lakers probably win that series, and then who knows what happens from there. Maybe they lose in the second round. We don't know.
Yeah, again, I have no issue at all with what he said. I think this is, in a lot of ways, this is part of what makes professional
Mm-hmm.
athletes as good as they are, right? They have that supreme belief in them, and then I kind of look at it as I'll really start to care more when he plays again. Like at this point, it's just, this is a guy who's out, and I was more interested in the way he was feeling and his injury updates
Mm-hmm.
than any of his thoughts about stuff that happened a year ago.
Agreed. Agreed. All right, but we got to have drama to
Yep,
talk about.
that's
So,
it.
I
That's why
keep
we love the league.
we've got a lot of stories today about guys who are returning, which is great. But I want to get to right now. Let's just get it out of the way. A guy who might not be returning. I was caught a little off guard by this 50-50 chance Jamal Murray returns to the Denver Nuggets. I was looking forward to the Denver Nuggets being that kind of, I don't know if I want to call them sleeper team, but that team that, you get Michael Porter Jr. back, you get Jamal Murray back, off
Mhm.
you go. Suddenly you've got that team that nobody wants to see in the playoffs. I was kind of looking forward to seeing that version of the Denver Nuggets. Took the wind out of my sails a little bit to hear that he's only a 50-50 chance to return this season.
Yeah, this report came from Mike Singer of the Denver Post. He basically wrote that Murray's had a lot of good days in his rehab and he's had some bad days. Not uncommon, right? That's going to happen. In that the Nuggets won't push him until he feels he's ready. No one is suggesting at all that Murray is milking this or is, not ready, but probably should be or anything like that. It's just a reality of he doesn't feel confident just yet in that knee after tearing his ACL, which was almost a year ago now. It happened
Mm-hmm.
in, I think it was the beginning part of April. So, yeah, so we'll see. It's not 50-50, still better than zero or 25% or wherever you want to go. So I hope he makes it back too. I hope Michael Porter Jr. makes it back because I think the Nuggets then become a really interesting team in the postseason. But if they don't have either one of those guys, despite how great Nikola Jokic is, and he may be the MVP again, I just don't know that they have enough to take down uh, Memphis, Golden State in the first round if that's ultimately where it goes.
Yeah, that's going to be a challenge for them for sure. Again, I would like to get Jamal Murray back and healthy, but we'll see. We'll see if he's able to fully recover and get back out on the floor right now. All right, let's move into. Well, I guess before we get to the returns, Mitchell Robinson. This is a big that's going to be out there in the market. We've talked a little bit about him. We've asked the question, what is his true market value? Now the Pistons have emerged as a team. And the reason why I'm giving this in particular a little bit more credibility is we've already heard the Pistons as a potential landing spot for DeAndre Ayton. Now, again, we don't expect the Suns to move on from DeAndre Ayton, but he will be a restricted free agent. And the Pistons were one of the teams that was mentioned months ago as a team that could go after him and give him a big offer. Part of that is just the math. But now they're being connected to another big, and it would make sense for them to target a center. So Mitchell Robinson, the Pistons as a landing spot for him, I think that's interesting, depending on what the price tag is in order to get him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what I think is kind of fun here with this one is this is a chance to put the Knicks in a really tough spot. Now, the Knicks don't have match rights. He's an unrestricted free agent, so the Knicks aren't in a position where they can match whatever offer. But generally, even with unrestricted free agents, unless they're really unhappy and looking to leave, they're gonna give that incumbent team, all right, hey, here's what I have for an offer. What do you think? And the Pistons can put that squeeze on. They're gonna go into the offseason with the most cap space of any team in the league. I project about 31 million right now for the Pistons. So that's, far and away. And center is still, let's call it a position in need. I don't want to call it really a hole on the roster because I like Isaiah Stewart. I think he's pretty good. I would like Isaiah Stewart a lot more as a 25-minute a night bench guy in kind of the Montrezl Harrell role. Like come in, play with a ton of energy, bang bodies, do all that stuff. Then starter. I like Kelly Olynyk too, but I think Olynyk, he's all sorts of different guys, and I think you could play him quite a bit. And I like Marvin Bagley, who they picked up at the trade deadline. He's actually played pretty well for Detroit so far. But when you have that cap space, go get guys, right? That's kind of what they did with Jeremy Grant. If as long as you don't get crazy with the contract, you can then turn that into a pretty good deal where you can maybe that becomes a trade piece down the line or something along those lines. So yeah, I'm excited to see ultimately where this goes with Mitchell Robinson, and I think the Knicks may regret that they didn't make him an unrestricted or make him a restricted free agent this past offseason when they could have then just gone and matched any kind of offer he got or anything like that. Potential this does still exist. The Knicks could sign him to an extension. But if you're Mitchell Robinson, are you going to do that Dinwiddie extension, about $10-11 million a year? Or are you going to hold out and then kind of say, you know what, I'll hold out because maybe I can get a bigger deal than that. Maybe I can get something in the 15+ million a year range, and that may be where this goes.
If you're the Pistons, do you pay that 15 million plus for Mitchell Robinson? Like, do you feel good about that?
Yeah, I think so, especially if I could maybe get it to a shorter deal or a deal that has maybe a something that has a team option at the end or non-guaranteed money on the final year or something like that, then yeah, I think so. I think I'd be a little bit more interested. If it was truly 15 a year average, that might be a little high, just given Robinson, his shooting range is measured in inches, not feet, despite any off-season workout videos you may see of him launching three-pointers all over the place. And he is a guy who is not his health record isn't great. So I worry about that a little bit too. So that's kind of that's probably a little bit high for me unless I get some protection on the back end.
Agreed. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too, especially with the injury concerns. That's something that would give me a little bit of pause there with Mitchell Robinson. A little bit of breaking news that we have here. Luka and Kevin Durant are the players of the week for their respective conferences. So that just came out.
Yeah, really well deserved. Huge weeks for both those guys. So kind of all around weeks too, in terms of always with Luka, right? He's always going to be right near that triple double status, but Kevin Durant as well was right there. And, a couple, but I think they both went 3-0 in the week. Maybe Luka went 3-1, 3-1 for Luka, 3-0 for KD. So yeah, makes sense.
Not a bad week. Let's talk Gregg Popovich here. Gregg Popovich, now the winningest coach all time in NBA history. And it sounds like he might not be done, might have another year in him. And the Spurs may have already found a successor, potentially, in Quinn Snyder. So first of all, congratulations to Gregg Popovich. That's a tremendous record. One of the all-time great coaches in the NBA, and fantastic to see him accomplish that. And then, what are your thoughts on Quinn Snyder? I mean, maybe it's a little premature to just have him as the guy, but I think that's interesting that name is already popping up.
If we remember
Popping
when
up.
Quinn Snyder left the left the college ranks, he was the Spurs G League coach for a little bit there. So I think it does make some sense, right? Why he is on their list. I think, they're a team that I think would like to get somebody in there who's going to be in there for years to come, right? And they don't necessarily want this to be a year or two thing, or they're like every other team and changing coaches.
Yeah.
And they've had Pop for 2 decades, right? So they want to keep him in place. So, and I think if they feel like it's Quinn Snyder, yeah, go forward and go. So, I'm very interested to see how this plays out with Pop too. I tend to think he's going to come the year, but we'll see. I wonder if he's got a little bit of that old school coach in him, where there's a little bit of when I'm not a coach, what am I? I always say, I kind of think that with a guy like Bill Belichick and my favorite team, the Patriots. Like, if he's not coaching them, what is he going to do? With life. We've seen this all the time with these college coaches. Sometimes they leave, and then unfortunately, a handful of them within a year or two have passed away, because it's almost like the thing that was driving them day to day is no longer there. So let's let's see how this goes down. And I kind of wonder too, could this be something where, hey, we're putting this out there just in case if Utah moves on, we've got maybe a succession plan in place, and we'll see. But yeah, it's going to be something to watch.
Absolutely. And once again, congratulations to Gregg Popovich. Let's talk about returns. Always nice when players come back from injury. So we've got Dillon Brooks coming back for the Memphis Grizzlies. I think that's big. Like, people are going to focus on, okay, Alex Caruso is back, Brook Lopez is back. Like, I feel like Dillon Brooks is to some degree underrated, and perhaps it's the shooting. He can shoot you out of some games. There's no question. But what he gives you defensively on the wing, kind of the swagger that he's got, it's the kind of thing that can matter in a playoff game. And so I think this is big for the Grizzlies to get him back in action.
Yeah, it really is. What that team was missing was another shot creator to help ease that burden on John Morant. I like Desmond Bane. Desmond Bane's not quite there yet, right? Desmond Bane is still, to this point in his career, he's a lot more of a secondary creator, or get shots created for him kind of guy. So I think it's in this case, you need one more guy. And we know Dillon Brooks, he believes he's an elite shot creator, right? He's never gonna turn down a look, and he thinks you match him up against Kevin Durant, LeBron, anybody, and he's like, yeah, I got this, let's go. And you kind of need guys like that too. It's you need those guys with that irrational confidence to push you forward. So this is big for Memphis, because the other thing this will help with is it just eases for the next few weeks here until the regular season ends, that burden on John Morant to create everything hopefully allows him to go into the postseason, the playoffs, feeling a little bit fresher and ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely. So that could help out in that regard as well. Markieff Morris also back. He's been out ever since that Nikola Jokic incident, which was like the beginning of the season. Now Markieff Morris is back in action, so that's fantastic. That neck injury was obviously no joke, something that, oh man, here I go again. I used popping with Pop, and now for something involved with Jokic, I went to no joke, and that's completely unintentional. Oh, happy Monday.
Sure.
Happy Monday. But in any event, Markieff Morris back in action again. Good to see, gives the Heat a little bit more depth, and can give you, again, that toughness that they're going to need come playoff time.
Yeah, and it is, you need those guys on the floor too that are gonna they're not afraid in a good way to knock somebody down, not the way Morse did it against Jokic, and he didn't even knock him down. But that foul he gave, I mean, that was ridiculous. We already talked about that when it happened, so we don't need to relitigate that whole thing. But I do think it is, it is. You want a little bit of edge, a little bit of meanness, right? When you're getting into the playoffs, and they've got it with him for sure. And that's also still kind of a hole on their roster. They don't really have a backup four. It ultimately ends up kind of turning into Jimmy Butler quite a bit, and that's not ideal, right? You really want that to be something you go to for a few minutes a night here and there, and then a card you can play in the playoffs versus something you have to go to all the time. So I think this is pretty big for the Heat. Even if it's only 10 minutes a night, that's 10 minutes a night. You're not having to put that on somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely. Brook Lopez also getting back in action, as well as George Hill for the Bucks. So that's big. We talked about Serge Ibaka being kind of a placeholder for Brook Lopez, somebody that can eat some minutes for you. But Brook Lopez getting back, he's only he played. I think he played opening night, didn't he? He played opening night, and then he's been out ever since. And getting George Hill back in action again. Those are just more veterans to bring in for the Bucks. Lopez has, well, especially last year in the championship run, he was an important part of what they were doing. So the Bucks, who at times the Bucks look like they flip the switch and you just go, oh yeah, they're still really, really good. They don't do it every single night, but you get these guys back. I think the Bucks are still primed for a deep playoff run here. Who knows? Could be a back-to-back champion if things go well for them.
Yeah, for sure. They lost the other night to the Suns, but they're 7-3 in their last 10. They're only 2.5 behind Miami. They're tied with Philly, virtually tied with Philly for second in the East. And still going to hold off the Bulls and the Celtics, and we'll keep the Cavs in that mix too, 3.5 back behind them. So the East, there's just no separation being created there. It's still super tight, but getting Lopez back, huge, right? And this again, it gives you about 3 weeks to work him back in, make sure everything feels pretty good where it's at. And the same thing with George Hill. He hasn't been out as long as Lopez has, but he's been out for a while himself and just another guy. And they need a little bit more depth because unfortunately they lost DeAndre Bembry, who looks like he's going to miss the rest of the season after suffering what looked like and sounds like is a serious right knee injury. We don't have any kind of details on that yet that I've seen, but that's a pretty big blow to the Bucks. And he wasn't playing a ton. He was only playing about, again, 8-9 minutes a night off the bench, but that's, we'll see. But George Hill coming back, that, eases that burden as well.
Yeah, that's,
and Pat Connaughton is starting to do a little bit of work too. So it sounds like he'll get back maybe shortly before the end of the regular season. So Milwaukee's going to be relatively whole here going on the playoffs.
And again, they are going to be a tough out for anybody. We've got a few 10-day contracts. The Pelicans, they get Alize Johnson. He's bounced around a bit this year, but he gets signed to a hardship 10-day for the Pelicans. The Pelicans, I mean, they've been dealing with some injury issues, health and safety protocols for CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, the hamstring strain. Not the time of year when they wanted to be experiencing all of this, but so they bring in Alize Johnson to come in and help them stem the tide a little bit.
Yeah, and this is on the heels of bringing in Tyrone Wallace as well. So they've got two guys there with them for the next little bit here on 10 days. McCollum, hopefully he's back soon. Sounds like Ingram maybe, I think they said a week to 10 days, and that was about probably 3 or 4 days ago now. So hopefully, he's getting close, maybe a week out or so for him. But yeah, and then we still don't know, maybe Zion, maybe not. Yeah. We're not really hearing any updates beyond he is back with the team, and he was actually at the game and on the bench with the team and everything. So they're hanging in there. I mean, they're probably, my guess is, it's so hard because it feels like if the Spurs could put together a good week of basketball, they could push maybe into that 10 spot in the play-in. They just haven't done it. It's been, a while. And then Portland, I mean, they won the other night against Washington in a game where it looked like Washington really needed to win, and Portland pulls it out. But I mean, when you look at what Portland's putting on the floor right now, it is not, these are not NBA starting and rotation caliber players for the most part night to night. So, I'm going to guess New Orleans may almost just kind of win the pillow fight by default there.
Yeah, that could very well be what happens. And I think a couple of games to watch. The Pelicans and the Lakers do play a couple of times in the last few weeks here. So
Hmm.
those will be big in determining where
And that
everybody.
could matter for 9-10, right? I
Exactly.
mean, that's the difference between being on the road for 2 games or at least home for
Hmm.
1 game.
Absolutely. Okay, we've got Drew Eubanks gets a third 10-day. Speaking of the Blazers, and Chris Dunn gets a 10-day as well. This is the season of like bizarre third, fourth. Has anybody gotten a fifth 10-day at this point with the team? Because
Not
we had
yet.
so many of the health and safety 10-day deals.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, which don't
right,
count like
exactly.
normal. No, normally it all counts towards the 2 10 days, and then you have to sign a guy for the rest
Hmm.
of the season. These have all
Like the
been
hardship.
the time where you have hardship and they don't count.
Another guy that gets a 10-day, Isaiah Thomas, second 10-day contract
Yeah, second
with the
10 day. Yep.
Hornets. What do you do? You think he sticks after the conclusion of this?
I do. He's played really well for them. And James Borrego came out, the Hornets coach, came out and said he's going to be because he really likes the energy
Great.
that Isaiah Thomas brings when he's out on the floor. So, yeah, I think he definitely sticks there. I think we'll see him continue to play alongside guys like LaMelo Ball, and that he really seems to enjoy being there, and they seem to enjoy having him. So my guess is he does one more 10 day, and as long as all goes well through the rest of this 10 day, then they sign him for the rest of the season.
Fantastic. It feels like we've been talking about this all season long, that we just want him to
Yeah.
stick somewhere. So this is great if he does wind up sticking with the
Yep.
Hornets, particularly, get into the playoffs and then see what he can do there and all of that. And then who knows, maybe this breathes new life into his career. And that would be fantastic to
Hmm.
see.
Yep.
The Suns signed a player to a two-way. Iffy Lundberg gets a two-way deal with them.
This one's kind of cool. He is the first. He technically is the second Danish-born player from Denmark to play in the NBA, but the first one grew up in Canada
Hmm.
and actually played for Team Canada. So the Danes don't really claim him. That was several years ago. So Gabriel Iffy Lundberg, they're claiming him as their first NBA player, and that's super cool,
Hmm.
right? Just shows continued growth, right? He was playing. The other interesting part of this is he was playing for Cheska Moscow, and that is the state army run team in the Russian league. As we know, the Russian leagues have all been barred from competition outside of Russia. The Russian teams have. So he actually paid his own buyout to get out of his contract there in full to come over to join the Suns and come to the U.S. So we'll see what he does with the Suns for the rest of this year. But I mean, just a kind of cool story all around that a guy's getting this opportunity and the way he got there. Related to that, there are only, I believe it's 4 or 5 total American-born players left playing in Russia. Probably the one most people would recognize the name of is Casper Ware. He bounced around the NBA for a couple years, but most players have left. Kevin Pangos, who famously took a buyout from
Yep.
the Cavs, gave back 100,000. He was set to sign. Actually did sign, but decided not to report because of what
What's
was
been going on?
because of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So we're going to see how that all plays out over the next several months here, because they are offering big money to some of the players to come back and play, as well as some players to just come and play and take their money to finish out their seasons. But the challenge that agents are worried about is so many of these teams' owners have had all their assets
Right.
frozen. Are they going to be able to
Yeah.
pay and deliver on those paychecks? So, and of course, that's beyond all of the optics of going to Russia right now to play basketball and all those kind of things for players. So we'll see how that all plays out over the next several months here. But for now, most guys are there. But yeah, I mean, Iffy Lundberg, let's go. My buddy Morton Jensen, who I know listens to the show, he's super excited. If you know more, he's has been covering the NBA for a long time from Denmark, and he's he and his countrymen are beyond excited to have their guy in the
Well, that's
NBA.
very cool. Very cool. I'm looking here at my notes and I realized that I missed one of the comebacks, and I don't know how I skipped this. I mentioned him previously, but we didn't actually get into it. Alex Caruso. Alex
Yeah,
Caruso coming back.
Yep.
Alex Caruso,
Yeah.
the bald
Huge.
eagle, the bald mamba, big balder brand, the man of many nicknames. But happy to see him back out there after he was dealing with a broken wrist, thanks to a
Hmm.
certain Bucks player.
Yeah. He shall not be
Yeah.
named. Yeah, I mean, Caruso came back and impact right
Hmm.
away in his first game. I think he had eight points, 4 assists, and 4 steals. So he'll tighten up that perimeter defense some, and hopefully get them back to playing a little better. They've won a couple in a row now, but they've slipped down in the standings. They're only a game ahead of the Celtics right now for fourth in the East. So we'll see. And then Lonzo Ball maybe, Patrick Williams maybe. Let's see, where those go. But yeah, it's great to have Alex Caruso back for sure.
We've seen the Bulls perform as one of the top teams in the East.
Mm-hmm.
Then we saw them deal with the tidal wave of injuries. So now for them, the key is just get
Yep.
everybody back healthy, and ideally you do it with at least a handful of games left, so you can get a little bit of rhythm and then hit the playoffs, and then you can just let the chips fall where they may. But again, it's about getting
Yep.
healthy right now for the Chicago Bulls. Again, they've been on, they were looking really good for a while. Injuries have taken their toll. I still think this can be a very dangerous team come playoff time. I think
Mm-hmm.
people are starting to write them off because they've kind of lost a little bit of that momentum. But if they get their guys, if they've got people coming back healthy again, I think they can do a ton of damage come playoff time.
Yeah, I think too, the other thing when people are looking a little deeper into it is they've been very poor against the best
Mm-hmm.
teams in the league. The other playoff teams, they have a pretty poor record. So, but yeah, I mean, anytime you've got three guys like DeRozan, Levine, and Vucevic who can score 30 points any given night, you're going to be in pretty good shape as long as you can play some defense. And that's what Caruso. And I'll take the onus this one because we didn't put it on the rundown. But Draymond Green's coming back tonight, Monday night for the Golden State Warriors. So that's a big return as well.
Mm-hmm.
The Warriors have semi righted the ship. They've won 3 in a row here, and they're in a battle with the Grizzlies for that 2 seed. And it's I'm very curious to see how teams are going to treat that. I think, do you want to be the 2 seed or the
Mm-hmm.
1 seed? I mean, the Suns are going to be the 1 seed. That's, clear and done. But Grizzlies, Warriors, would you rather play Denver, or do you want to have, Minnesota or the Clippers? My guess is you'd rather be the 2 and get Minnesota or the Clippers,
Yeah.
right? Because you don't want to deal with Jokic and maybe Murray, maybe Porter.
No.
Yeah, that's. I don't even know why I brought that up as a question, unless you think the Lakers are getting in there and up to 7, and that's probably not
No,
happening at
that's
this point.
just mathematically that doesn't look possible. But let me throw
Yeah,
this in there though. What if suddenly we get a positive report on Paul George? And
that's different. Yeah.
then that could change, but that could come last minute. Suddenly the Clippers go surprise,
Yep.
and then that would be rough. If you're the 2 seed and then surprise it's the Clippers with Paul George and maybe Kawhi, you're not excited
Yeah.
about that.
Let me throw you a question. 'Cause this was interesting. This was something that Bill Simmons brought
Uh-huh.
up, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on it. Should the play-in have a win percentage cutoff? Like right now, it's no matter what, it's the top 10,
Mm-hmm.
right? So 7 through 10 go into the play-in tournament. Should there be a cutoff where it is, no, you didn't win enough, so you don't go, and then we just, whether it be a buy or whatever it is, or you just lock into it. What do you think about that? And let's take this current specific season out of your thoughts as best you can,
Sure.
because I know you may have different thoughts about it right now at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not looking at it as though like, oh man, I really want to keep the play-in just to make sure the Lakers get in. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of Lakers fans that right now are saying we wish the
Oh,
play-in
yeah.
didn't exist. Let's just end this.
Yeah.
Let's move on. Can we fast forward to July 1st already? We're done, right? So I'm definitely not going to look at this as though like, the Lakers being in a play-in spot right now. I'm not going to let that impact me, but I'm going to look at it more from an NBA perspective. I think that complicates things, and I think the play-in tournament is to some degree exciting because you get win or go home basketball. You get that importance of those games, and that's part of the selling point for the league is you can get that exciting win or you're done March Madness-y style feel to some extra games in the season. And so
Sure.
from that perspective, whether the win percentage is high or not, I think that's what they want. And on top of that, how many fans are going to spend their time looking at the exact win percentage on the season? They're probably not going to spend a lot of time. You and I will, but most fans probably aren't going to follow along with not just what spot they are in the standing, but what the win percentage is. So I wouldn't be in favor of that, at least looking at it from the perspective of the NBA. I think they feel like they've found something here that adds a little bit of excitement to the end of the season. Maybe it prevents some tanking and adds a little bit of intrigue there. So I don't, I wouldn't make that change if it's me.
Yeah, I guess the only time I think where it would be pretty crappy is look at the Raptors and the
Mm-hmm.
Timberwolves, right? The two current seven
Sure.
seeds, probably maybe the likely seven seeds. They've had legitimately good seasons,
Yeah.
both teams. I would hate that if, like, let's say in their final game of the season on that Saturday, one of their key guys rolls an ankle and needs to be out for about 5
Mm-hmm.
days. So he ends up missing the entirety of the play in. And then some team that won 34 games comes up and gets hot for 2 days, or even semi hot for 2 days and wins. And now all of a sudden you're
Right.
out. Like that part does leave me feeling a little cold on the whole thing. And I get it. We always had these teams that got in with losing records in the
Mm-hmm.
past and all those kind of things. But that's not the case right now. It hasn't been the case the last couple years. So I do wonder, if there maybe is something of that, whether it's a games back qualifier, like it was that first time they ran this in the
Mm-hmm.
bubble, which was more as a, hey, this, we're putting this in play now because of the fact that we want to counter missing all these
Sure.
games. Make sure we take care of teams with that. But it's just something he threw out there, and it kind of that's kind of interesting. That was a task while I was folding laundry today. It got me thinking. I was like, I'm gonna ask Trevor about that when we record
Yeah,
later.
it's an interesting idea, and I can see it from that perspective too. If you are one of those teams that, if you're the 7 or 8 seed, you're not happy about it, right? Because
Yeah,
under the previous format,
yeah. You
you're
feel like
in.
you already did
Yeah,
it.
you're in.
Yeah,
So that's, you can see where that's tough, but again, from the league
sure.
perspective, I think those games definitely help you out. I will
Yeah.
say though that,
Well, I mean, it's been
yeah,
awesome, right? The first couple of years of it have been
right.
great. So,
And if you
yeah,
look at, let's say we went back, let's say just right now, Adam Silver said, just kidding, everybody, we're going back to the old format. 1 through 8 gets in. And obviously, they're not doing that right now, but pretend you reverted to that.
yeah.
If that happened right now, every playoff team would be above 500.
Mm-hmm.
That, I don't know
Yeah,
how often that happens, but I seem to
yeah.
remember a lot of years where you would have in one conference or another, you would have one, maybe two teams that,
No, no, no. In
I'm
one
trying to be
conference.
nice, Keith. I'm trying to be nice here, man. But you would get
Yeah.
a couple of, sometimes one, sometimes two below 500 teams sneaking in, and then you would have on the flip side, the other conference, you would have a few above 500 teams not getting in, and people would say, "Oh, this
Mm-hmm.
needs to be fixed." This would be the one year
Sure.
where nobody would say, "Oh, you need to fix conference imbalance and all that," because all the 500 and above teams would be in, all the below 500
Yep.
teams would be out.
Yeah. Yep. Hey, while we're on standings
Mm-hmm.
talk, just to make sure we're being complete, the Detroit Pistons became the second team
Hmm.
officially eliminated from the playoffs. They joined the Orlando Magic, so those two teams are officially eliminated. The Phoenix Suns remain the only team to have clinched a playoff spot. But we're gonna start getting those. I think, if my math is right, probably by the end of the week we may have a couple more of
Mm-hmm.
those.
Mm-hmm. And won't be that long and two until Phoenix clinches the number one seed throughout the playoffs.
Yeah, that's probably a couple weeks
Yeah,
out unless Memphis or Golden State slip. But yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of time. 7.5
yeah,
game lead
they're not
for
giving
them
that
right
up.
now in the Grizzlies. They're not getting caught.
All right. I think we can wrap things up there. Appreciate everybody for joining us. Again, make sure you do follow us. If you're over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, make sure give us that rating, particularly a 5-star rating. We would love that. And then over on Apple Podcasts, if you want to throw us a comment in the form of a review, we always love getting those in as well. So again, appreciate all of you joining us here. Make sure you do subscribe to the YouTube channel, turn on those notifications. Till next time, everybody. See ya and stay safe.